Let's put the X in extras. Welcome to the Extras Kiss podcast. I am Big Steve, and alongside with me is my partner in crime, Doc. Doc, how are we doing today on this dreary fall morning?
That was an excellent intro.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. It is a bit dreary, so we're going to try to bring up the mood a little bit, hopefully.
Good time to be listening and talking Kiss, I think, especially hot off of our discussion. We just finished with talking about the first Alive album, and we had some extra thoughts, so we decided to just keep the player going here so we can just record and keep chatting about it. So
yeah, we hit 50 minutes on that one. So
I mean, it was a dual album, so technically we came in under. It should have been 30 and 30, but
yeah, I suppose if you do the math, you know, whatever excuse we need to talk a little more, that's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, we definitely dug into the songs as far as like album version versus live version, in quotes, air quotes. Yeah. And I think we'll dive into that today as well. That's kind of part of what I would like to address, and maybe the cover artwork. There was some other artwork stuff that came along with that album that I think people thought were really neat, and this kind of put them on the next level as far as kind of making them into the spectacle. And there's a little bit of controversy over the fixing of a few things, and I think we should just dive right in.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even know. I mean, I think it was controversial when they first admitted that that was the situation. I don't think anybody necessarily cares as much anymore, in the sense like I think when they first started talking about it, I think people were quick to, oh, well, this is phony. You set this up and it was, staged, as it were. But I mean, honestly, the more that time has passed, because I think that the first time that they really kind of admitted like, hey, we had to go back and touch stuff up, but they were very ambiguous about it, was probably right around 2000, 2001. I think there was an interview with Paul where he was alluding to that. And then Gene talked about it a little bit more in his autobiography. But as far as he was more or less just discounting the people who are saying, well, you just basically staged the whole album, recorded it. And he's just like, no, we of course had no time and no money to do something like that. But we cleaned it up enough that the idea was to try to exemplify what it sounds like, at least audioly at a Kiss show. So I harbor no ill will for it, because I think it makes for a spectacularly balanced live album, which is probably the biggest miss with other live albums from other bands. That's my 2 cents initially with this.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with people fixing things a little bit on live albums. Thing to do, and there actually was a VH1 used to do these ultimate album or classic album TV shows where they would sort of dive into these classic rock bands, big albums. Dark Side of the Moon was one, and Paranoid by Black Sabbath, and they do all these sort of underground interviews with the producers and all that. And anyway, they did one for Alive, and there were a few musicians, big musicians, and I can't remember specifically who they were, that were just really angry about it.
Is that right?
Yeah. So there was several that were totally cool with that. You can't expect to capture a perfect album, when they're jumping around like that, and they're sometimes not singing directly into the mic, or you miss a drum and you hit the rim of a drum and it sounds terrible, and cleaning it up. And so they presented it as a live album from the beginning, of course. And it sounds live.
Yeah.
They did a really nice job of fixing it, and you got to do what you got to do. You're not going to put out an album that just sounds like shit.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is it nowadays, and I think we mentioned this, just before this when we were on our live, when we actually did the album review here. I was trying to think of modern bands, and again, I don't listen to a lot of modern music, and I'm okay with that. But it's been really, I can't think of a lot of bands that put out live albums these days. But when they do, it's essentially like they know that this is going to be their purpose, and there's the technology is infinitely better than it was 30, 40 years ago. So they can capture a balanced sounding live album, right? Like, so they have more at their disposal. You listen to the live albums, again, there aren't many that I personally think of from my collection or that I've listened to from the era of Alive. And to me, they're not enjoyable. Like I will listen to them to get through it and see, oh, okay, well, this is a different, I like this, or they added this or whatever. But as far as re-listening value, you'd like to go back and revisit it. Half the time, yeah, I don't necessarily need to hear the mistakes and where they're not singing directly into the mic and stuff like that. So to me, this was a great idea because I can listen to Alive and Alive 2 and Alive 3 and whatever over and over again because every song is balanced, and they took the time to properly balance in the right crowd mix so that it corresponds to what's happening in the song. So is it generally overly scientific? Perhaps, but to me, that's a labor of love. Like, that's what we want to present.
Yeah, and sort of in, I guess, typical Paul and Gene fashion, I guess, it's sort of a half truth, when you're presenting it as live, because it's not called Kiss Live. Mm-hmm. It's called Kiss Alive.
Live. Yep.
So
with an exclamation point.
Right. And so, yes, they're presenting it as live. So they're sort of doing this little like smoke and mirrors type of thing. And I think they probably knew that they were going to end up fixing some stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you watch that documentary, it's really interesting because Eddie Kramer, who produced the album, went back and he played parts pre-touch-up.
Mm-hmm.
And would show how bad it sounded, and then would show how good it sounded afterwards.
Sure.
So a lot of this stuff was touched up, and I think you said that Peter actually played live on everything and didn't touch anything up, possibly vocals.
Yeah, but his drumming, that's my understanding from reading the Behind the Mask book and other interviews, that Peter has his own website. He hasn't updated it in quite a while, but it's actually a pretty cool website because it's old school. I think he made it probably in the early 2000s and hasn't really updated a lot on there, except he does do meet and greets and stuff. So it does have some current updates, but as far as the content goes, it's not very new. But what he did maybe 15 years ago is he's got a Ask the Cat section, and it's literally like, it looks like in a Word document, and it's just, I don't know, 50, 60 different random questions that fans have asked, and he, responds, and he stands by that too. It's like, that's my drumming through the entire album. And then you read the Behind the Mask book, and Kramer said the same thing. Basically, the only thing that we kept for in its entirety was Pete's drumming, because it was, solid enough and it was consistent that they could build around that, which, again, a testament to, his drumming ability, which he doesn't always get enough credit, that he was able to maintain that, because it's, being a drummer, it is very easy to go off script when you're playing in front of people and you've got the adrenaline going through you along with other chemicals, perhaps. But that was kind of the central part of how they developed around it. So,
well, that's great. I mean, that's pretty sweet that he was able to, sort of create that foundation. And I imagine that not a lot of it was terrible. It's more like, okay, here's a wrong note here or there vocally, or something along those lines. It's not like completely redone or dubbed with extra guitars and things like that. It was just like, okay, let's take out this guitar bit and then just redo this 10-second section.
Yeah, I think they do. I think there's a little bit of everything in there, because again, my understanding was there are certain parts during songs that in the excitement of the jumping around, mic stands got knocked over, so you hear that, and then you don't hear, there's just dead spaces they're trying to fill in. It wouldn't. So there's another one of the Kiss DVDs I have. I can't remember which one it is. That might be Extreme. No, I think it's Exposed, Confidential. One of, I don't know. They show clips. They're interviewing Paul and Gene, and they show clips from that era. And they reiterate the fact that that was a bad habit of Gene's, to constantly forget the lyrics of the songs that he's singing. And it's hilarious. I'll have to find the clips, and if you haven't seen it, it's hysterical because I think there's a clip from that era, and they're supposed to be playing Let Me Go Rock and Roll, but he starts singing the lyrics to Rock and Roll All Night, and he just trails off, and I think Paul tries to save him, and he jumps back in, but I guess that was it. So I could see that being the case too, is that he just admits, he's like, sometimes I just get so excited I completely lose myself, which for all intents and purposes, I think that's fantastic. I think that's just, again, shows how human these guys that are larger than life actually can be, and it's hysterical at the same time.
Yeah, and he still does that to this day. I mean, now he's like 70, 72, something like that. And there's Instagram reels and things like that of him messing up lyrics, and it's pretty funny. There's a few out there. So, yeah, so as far as you and I go, I guess no problems with fixing the album up.
Yeah.
But like I say, there were people who were a bit angry about it because they kept it under the radar, sort of, for, what are we talking, nearly 20 years, I guess, before they, 15 years or something, before they actually started admitting, okay, we fixed a couple of things. But it sounds better. It brings across what they're trying to do. There's a couple of parts where the crowd noise is like, okay, I don't think people would be cheering that loud during the entire song. But overall, I mean, it rated very high for me because I love the live feel, whether it's completely real or not. I love live albums. I kind of always have, because you have those little mistakes, or the extra guts behind it, and the adrenaline's flowing, and you just get a little more of the art side of it, where it's not perfected in a studio.
Yeah, if they are truly artistic, because I know a lot of bands where I've heard terrible live albums because while the music is really solid and I love their studio work, it doesn't always translate in a live show. It's just it should, like, if you're going out and performing, you'd like to think that you're bringing that A game, but there are some out there that I've listened to and it's like, oh boy, it's this. I'm glad I wouldn't have paid for this. Like, I'm glad that I didn't go see this, because this is just, there's no charisma, there's no chemistry between the fans and the art, which is the exact opposite of, and to your point too, also, like the in regards to the crowd noise, maybe not being specifically like, oh, I don't know if this part would be that loud. They kind of, there was nothing before them, in the sense that, like, nobody that I know, mastered a live album like this, right? Like, so they were kind of the pioneers. So I think again, considering that there was no roadmap, and they're like, we just want to present what it sounds like. I think that until you start picking it apart like us nerds do, like, it makes for a good listen from beginning to end, because it does feel like you're, with the exception of seeing them, you're getting that energy and you're hearing the crowd around you. And I just think that that's a cool way to approach it. And I'm not big on live albums. That's the thing. So,
yeah. And I think with the artwork and things like that, they did sort of give you a visual, even though I believe that was a staged photo on the front cover. But there were photos and things from the shows in the sleeves, and there were letters from the band members in the sleeves. And so that's pretty cool. I mean, they gave you an idea of what it might look like. So the cover is a little weird because, Ace is holding his guitar upside down. He's not obviously playing anything on it.
Right.
Gene's holding his bass way up to his left and not playing anything. Paul maybe looks like he's actually playing, and Peter you can barely see, but it's a cool cover. So it kind of gives you an idea of what the show might look like, because that's when they started really building the live show with the fireworks and the lights and the big Kiss sign and all that stuff. They sort of were getting in their groove at that point. So this was like summer of 75 when this was recorded. And it wasn't released. I mean, it was released shortly after that, so it didn't take real long to redo it. I was just looking at the dates, and I think it was recorded like July, August or something, and then released September, October.
But if you know that that's the purpose going into it, I think, that helps, having the producer and engineers kind of like ready to go. Like we know we're going to be kind of fishing this together as it goes along. So that probably helped, as opposed to them just making the call after they heard it and like, oh my God, this is awful. We need to, so I think basically, I think it was purposeful, right? Like they knew what they were doing before they actually did it. That would be my guess. That's based off of the literature that's been in front of me. So, but yes, also to your point on the front cover there, I think that might be, don't quote me. I think that guitar, that might be the last photographic evidence that it existed, because I believe that's the one that Paul brought in to record on Destroyer, and then when they brought in all the Casablanca or the record label leadership came into tour and see them in action, I think one of them tripped over it and then knocked it over and actually broke. The engineer Corky Stasiak, I believe, actually told that story, because I think it was his. I'm trying not to misquote wrong names. If I'm wrong, correct me. It's fine. But he had like the same style guitar, and his got knocked over years earlier, and it broke because it was like a one-piece type guitar or something to that effect, and it wasn't fixable. And Paul had the same style guitar, and I think that's the one he's holding on the cover of the Alive record. And the issue was when they were recording, they had to wrap the cable, in a circle essentially, so that it wouldn't pop out while they were playing. And they had a tendency to just lay their guitars and basses up against amplifiers, even after the company purchased several nice guitar stands. But when they brought in the executives to come and see, this is what we're doing, one of them just kind of tripped over it, and the engineer did his best to, bodyguard Kevin Costner and fly in front of the bullet, and he couldn't stop it, and it pong, and that was the end of Paul's guitar, his favorite guitar. So bummer, but historical little trivia there.
That's funny. I was just looking at the cover. He's got a Gibson Firebird.
Yeah.
Ace has a black triple pickup Les Paul. It looks black, but he's holding it kind of up against him, so it may have been his Sunburst triple pickup, and then Gene's got his Ripper. So Gibson. They may have had a contract in those days.
Interesting. Yeah. No Gibson drums though. Those are not Gibson.
That's
drums.
not a thing, is it?
That's not, no. As far as I know, no, it's not.
Yeah. So it's a good conversation. I mean, it would be interesting to hear somebody else's perspective that doesn't think that the fixing of the album was a good idea, or is pissed off that they had sort of masked that for 20 years. It would be nice to just sit and chat and just get another opinion, because you and I oddly are on the same side of this, which doesn't happen all that much.
No.
I mean, we are very like-minded, but have differences in opinion pretty frequently on certain things. So sometime we may have we got to find people
some sort
of guest
we got to find somebody that doesn't like Kiss, which I'm sure wouldn't be too difficult in our group, I'm sure. Yeah, because they'll, but they've got to have, let's just talk about why you wouldn't like that. But nowadays I just can't imagine it being as hot a button as it is, especially like when they're first admitting it. Then people are just have this tendency to, oh my God, you lied to us, how dare you? It's just the over dramatizing. It's like, what, really? I mean, seriously, it's hard though, because again, live albums just hit me different. Like there's not many of them that I actually enjoy listening to. There's our difference, right? So you like live albums, I don't, but we can both agree that this is a good live album. So that's an interesting take on it, I guess.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is. I just gravitate towards that live feel. It's got more feeling in it to me, it's like a real painting versus a print. You can tell the difference, and you can tell the textures. The textures are different, and brush strokes are maybe a little more apparent, and things like that. So in the looking at it through the art lens, I guess, to me, the live album is the real painting, and the studio is the fixed up, photoshopped version.
Yeah, that's fair. So I guess we'll stay at our impasse to say we agree to disagree to agree. That's kind of the way I'm looking at this. So
my brain's not ready for that kind of thinking. I don't know what that means, but I'll just trust you.
Well, good deal. Was there anything
So-
else that you wanted to touch on this? Do you have any other closing thoughts here, there, Doc?
No, I don't think so. Once again, we hit about 20 minutes. I kind of expected this one to be a little bit longer, but since there was no controversy and we didn't get to take the gloves off and fight about anything,
Yeah, just
yeah,
it is what it is,
there's
and
not a lot more.
We covered a lot in our review too. It was a healthily long review, but still under time, so I think we're fine there. But that's good. So it's good. I think we'll just close this one out and say thank you for tuning in. If you decided you want to listen to the extras, especially if you decide you want to listen to the album review that we did just right before this, Alive, just a great album across the board. I scored it at an 8, I believe, and it kind of runs in conjunction with what the original band members thought, and they were rating it 4s and 5s. They were happy with what they put out, and I was happy with what they put out.
Yeah, and I think I was like an 8.6 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's high to me just because it's great. All the great songs, just with a little more guts and a little more feeling behind it. So it's great. I could listen to that over and over.
Awesome.
Just good overall. So awesome. We'll sign out on this one, and if you would like, we're looking at Destroyer next.
Absolutely. Tune in next time. Thanks for listening.
We will catch you later, and have a good one.